She is the Dean of the Dean and Director, excuse me, of the Sacramento State University Library. Amy has held leadership positions at UC Berkeley, Davis, and Harvard University. She writes and presents on moral leadership and diversity, optimizing operations, and active shooter training. Okay, we'll hear more about that. All right. She has a BA in literature from the University of Minnesota, a master's in library and information sciences from Simmons College, and an MA in literature from Northeastern University. She also has applicable training and education by way of the U.S. Navy, where she served as an aviation support equipment technician, petty officer, second class. Amy's a first-generation student from North Dakota. Her passion is making a difference in our students' lives, clearing the pathway to their success and ensuring equitable education brought her to our California State University system. So please welcome Amy Kautzman.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Okay, raise your hand if you're a big old nerd. Come on, come on. I know you are. You're here every Friday. We know this to be true. Yeah, please. So we're going to talk about libraries, and it's my passion. It's my love. I knew from the day I was cognizant of libraries that I was going to work in them someday. And they've changed so much at this point. What is a library, right? What is the future of libraries? And the thing I'm going to ask you to begin with is, where am I pointing? Thank you. I'll move it up. Does that help a bit? Okay. We can just have the keyboard. Okay. Let me just rearrange here 5 seconds so I can look elegant as I communicate with you. There. Okay. I know, look at you all. Is this a pain point or a memory point? That's the question I want to ask you. Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, so we all remember the card catalogs, right? I mean, I remember using them as a public library user. By the time I went to university, we were switching to online catalogs. But a good part of my early career was also spent moving all that information in the cards into the online systems. And I just want you to think about, your first experiences in libraries, what it smelled like. And remember, that smell is the rotting of the paper, just so you know. It is biology. But it's also a place where you probably went to learn about new things, to enjoy story hour, to hide, in my case, to get heat, when our family often didn't have enough money in North Dakota to keep the house warm. But it was also just our safe place, our place of wonderment, where you always learn something new and different. Okay, we're going backwards. So we're going to do a little bit of a history lesson. And I'm not going to go all the way back in time, but until the American Revolution, most books were imported from England. Local presses would do broadsides, pamphlets, some school texts, but we didn't have a publishing industry in the early Americas. But from 1639 to 1776, just to help you think about the publishing industry, we produced about 60 books a year. Okay, think about how many books or just pieces of information come to you now. After 1776, there was an increase in publications. And the first university library came into being when John Harvard donated 300 books to Harvard University. Well, to a university that became known as Harvard University. It was the first colonial college library. And most collections, as our country grew, were just eclectic small collections that people built up. mostly religious preachers who would build collections. Not everybody could read, and there was no funding for libraries. But over time, it became inculcated into the educational system that books mattered, having a place to read those books mattered. And for the longest time, they didn't allow those books to circulate. You would have to go to the library. In some libraries, they were chained to the shelves to make sure you didn't, they were precious. You know, it was an amazingly rare thing. Public libraries are also an amazingly new phenomenon in the history of the world. Before the 1880s, there were very few public libraries that were free. You would have to join a club, like the first public library that was put together by Benjamin Franklin, but you were mostly a white male who had the means to pay for access. And it was only in New Hampshire, gotta love Petersboro, they came up with the first free one that allowed that to move forward. And then Carnegie, around, you know, the what was it, 1880s, started to fund his Carnegie libraries, mostly to whitewash his robber baron activities, but it worked for us. We all had public libraries because of that. Now, some of you are heavy users of public libraries, and some of you have gone through university and used academic libraries, and they're very different from one another. And I know you're recognizing Kel there, so the Doe Library, as well as cute little McKinley Park. You know, most of our public library experiences are around the Dewey Decimal System, which was a way of ordering and finding materials. Universities throws us into a more complicated world of academic libraries under the Library of Congress system. It allows for more expansion for that fine separation of different pieces of knowledge. And how many of you remember bibliographies, indexes, abstracts? Oh my gosh, we used to have to look up something in paper and then go find the journal in paper. Was that like 100 years ago? I mean, seriously, because nobody has paper anything anymore for these kind of activities. Research institutions like the large research ones, you know, the UCs, you know, University of Chicago, Harvard, Yale, et cetera, they build collections just in case somebody needs to use something. The CSUs build collections just in time. We are not meant to hold collections forever and ever. We are meant to hold enough for what students are studying for the classes that they're taking right now, which means that we don't always have as deep a collection as some of the R1s. But that's when our goddess of interlibrary loan comes into being and makes sure that we can all access whatever you might need. Now, librarians are awesome, and I'm not just talking about myself, I'm talking about all of the amazing librarians. You know, Antonio Megliabeccio was known to be a literary glutton. He knew all of the volumes in the library. He could also tell the page and paragraph in which any passage occurred. He was a guy who, if you asked for a book, he'd be, it's down the hall, 2 rows, second shelf, the red one. Okay. He was also known to be an eccentric old bachelor, negligent, dirty, slovenly, and always reeking of, I want to turn this up a little bit, is it possible? Always reeking of tobacco. Okay, I'll move this up even closer because I see a few people. We will put this as close as we can. Okay. Of course, Benjamin Franklin, we don't think of him as librarian, but he started the first public library. David Hume was a librarian. You philosophers might know that. Mao Zedong, J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, talk about order, right? Yeah. And then Audre Lorde, those of you that might know her, famous, you know, African-American poet in America, she did the expression, for the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Radical feminist. She was an amazing librarian. And librarians are the ones right now on the front lines in public libraries, especially in the South, who are fighting to keep books on the shelves. That's not the battle I have to fight, thank God, but that's the battle they are in the midst of right now. They're being threatened and they're, you know, in harm's way. And I don't know if you read the New York Times article this weekend, but there was one librarian who said, The threat she got that she liked the most was when somebody called her a Satanist pervert peddler of porn. It was like, yeah, I'll take that. But we've moved from being people who owned knowledge in our minds, like that smelly Italian librarian, to people who now know how to find information. I'm not going to read through all these questions, but back in the day, the acquisition and the ability to regurgitate knowledge was key to being a successful librarian. These were primarily scholars who insisted that everybody else come up to their level. And there wasn't a lot of scaffolding to allow people from different classes to become educated. It was really about making sure that those who were privileged had all the ability to keep knowledge in any way whatsoever. So here's an exam I think many of us would be hard pressed to pass. You know, and a few more questions. I mean, I look at these and I think there's a total of 18 questions. They have to be answered in 3.5 hours. And then there's a section for translation to practice your French and German. It was a standard, it was given that you would know that. And we see some of this still with doctorate programs. In order to get your doctorate, you often need to acquire a different language, right? Personally, I would like to have the person who passed this exam and join me in the bar pubs. We can start going to quiz night. I'll take film, sports, music, and they can handle everything else, right? But when we talk about what library work is today, there's the things that you think of as library work. We still do everything that we've always done for the most part. Well, we don't do library penmanship anymore. We don't type out the card catalogs, but we still advocate for our collections. We purchase, acquire, organize, manage. I mean, I didn't know that I would become a purchasing agent, a negotiator with, national and international businesses when I took on this job. You know, we manage a building. So much of my work is toilets exploding, or, I mean, seriously, it's an old building and there's 23 bathrooms. We do customer service, we do fundraising, we buy the books, we present the books, we do instruction to our students, we connect people, we're connectors, that's what we do. But we're also doing all the new exciting stuff. We're delving into artificial intelligence, open access, which is, as taxpayers, you'll appreciate this. Does anybody know what open access is? I have one brilliant person, thank you. So you as taxpayers pay for faculty to come and teach. As part of the tenure seeking process, they need to publish. So we pay them to publish an article. But we then have them give that article for free to a journal. And that journal then publishes that article. And what do? They sell that back to us. They sell us the work of our faculty members. And we have to keep paying for it from paper format to a digital format. And if it's a journal article that requires images, you have to pay to have images put in. I mean, these people have figured out a way to make money that's incredibly crazy making. So we are working, and they also own copyright, by the way. We can't make it freely available to anybody. So open access is where we are helping to own the intellectual property of our faculty and making it available free to the world. We're still having to pay to put it out into the world, but once we have a sea change where there's enough people that have enough free stuff out there, we won't rely as much on the companies that are charging us an arm and a leg. And there's generally a 4% increase, and most of these companies are making more money, by the way, in profit than Apple and Microsoft do annually. Oh, it's a business, get into it. We're working on data visualization. I'm right now designing a data lab for the library. We do data curation, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Scholarly communication is when we partner with faculty on ensuring that their pathway to publishing is as easy as possible. Fight against book bans. We have a makerspace I'll talk about. We amplify scholarly work. We are publishers. There's so much that we do that we don't think of as being library work. Everybody thinks of us as being in the book business. If I had $1 for every time somebody says, oh, you must enjoy reading. Do you have time to read during your lunch hour? Because thank God they don't think I read all day long. No, I don't, I'm in a business, and that business is supporting my faculty and students, and that business is making sure that we're making the operations work and everything is available to our students. So at this point, I'm going to take you on a wild tour through our webpage, and I know you really want to do that. And I hope to make it somewhat interesting, okay? But I want to take this up because it's going to help us to see what's available for the people who we support on campus, and also for you to understand what it is that a library is now. You know, and the best way to anticipate what the future is going to be is really to help to build it. And so we're always looking out in the world, and we're reading business press, tech press, you know, new practices. We read in all the fields that we support on campus, all the degree programs, to try to think about what are their cutting edge issues and how can we look at supporting that in the library. So on the front page of our webpage, we do all the most popular student stuff. Painless entry. My goal in life for our students is there's no pain points. We don't charge fines. If there's overdue books, we really try never to hit them in their pocketbooks because our students can't afford it. We do scold them. We do call them up and make them bring the books in, but you know, but we also know that more people use this webpage, almost double, than come into our library every day. This is the library. We don't think of it as it, but it really is. So what does it mean when we blow up to, you know, our perceptions of a library? And no cats were harmed in the making of this photograph. But we do all sorts of things where we, again, try to remove pain points and try to anticipate what people are going to need before they can even think to ask for it. So I don't know how many of you walked through the breezeway, but one of the first things I did when I came into this job was I put tables in the breezeway. There were no tables in that space. It's amazing space. It's cool in the summer and it's hospitable in the winter. And not only is that there for our students, but our unhoused people use it all the time too. It's where they go and charge their phones. It's a safe place to be, as well as long as people behave themselves. And it's part of the way that we are open and serving the community at all times. We have a family study room because 1 in 4 of our students has children. And what are you supposed to do if you don't have Wi-Fi at home and you need to do a paper and you have a kid? What do you, and especially if you're a young student and your parents are like, I've been with this kid all day here, and you have to write a paper. Bring your kid into the library. It's not a pretty room. I'm not going to say it is. It's looking for a sponsor, by the way, but it's a space where people can be there with their children. We invite food everywhere. You want to have 20 pizzas delivered to the library? Go for it. I want a sticky library, and I don't mean food on the tables. I mean that once you come in, you see your people, you feel socially loved there in the good way, the respectful way, that you don't want to leave. This is where you're learning. This is where you can be safe. And some of our students don't have safe homes, or they're in dorm rooms or apartments with so many other students that this is their quiet place to be. You know, we also have built lockers outside our library, so you can request a book. We will put it in the locker, type in a code. Those Amazon lockers, you've seen them in grocery stores and other places. We have about, I think, 75 of them. 24/7, you can come in. If you're working late, you can't get in, our hours aren't great for you, then you can come in and get what you need. We will pull them, put them in the shelf, and get them ready. Our goal is to be inclusive, not exclusive. My past, I heard some of you say, about Harvard. Guess what? Their claim to fame is how many people they turn away. Our claim to fame is how many people we welcome. That's our goal, right? We educate all. Yeah. Oops. And it's you as tax-paying citizens who support a CSU system, right? That's what we do in California. We educate all, we believe in our students, and we design a library for those students. And that's how we build the future, right? And just if you need to know how important it is to America, 1 in 20 Americans with a college degree graduated from the CSU. That's pretty impressive. I wonder what it'd be like if we put all the Harvard grads into that. Not that many. Harvard was a great place. I just have to give them a bad time. And they know they deserve it. So we're going to talk about libraries publisher. This is also from our webpage. We publish materials. Why, and we all know this. We know that people can self-publish, go on Amazon. We know that the Sacramento Public Library has an East Street Press. You can literally write, they don't? Okay. Okay. But we help faculty publish. We have journals. We do a journal publication process called OJS. It's the Open Journal System. So again, I said open access. So this is an open access journal. So any of our faculty or students can start a journal. And this system allows for an editorial board, reviewers to participate in a computerized system. So it's all automated. There's a way, that you can email in. It holds all of the documents. You can review them, you approve, you send them back for improvements, just like you do with any publication process. It accepts manuscripts, put them through the rigorous review process, and then we publish. It's free of charge to our community, and it allows them, our students and our faculty, to be producers of knowledge. So I know this is small press, but I think they share the link with you. This is a brand new product, the newest one that just came out, and you might have heard President Luke Wood announce at Sac State intends to become a leader in advancing the use and understanding of artificial intelligence. And for us, it's in the, as we use it for teaching and learning. We're not coding or inventing the huge, large language models. We're really just looking at what does it mean as an educational institution to include AI. So we've announced the National Institute for Artificial Intelligence. My colleague, Alexander Sasha Sidorkin, he's former dean of College of Ed, is now we call him the AI czar. And he will lead an AI mission at this university, CSU wide. And his new journal is called AI EDU Archive. And what this is it's going to be a preprint platform, meaning people, unfinished ideas, this is all moving in like rapid speed, right? It's moving so fast. The average time it takes a journal, an academic journal, to publish an article can take up to 3 years. A preprint allows people to push stuff out there, get feedback, edit, change it, improve it. It's available to the public in real working time. The working document, take what's good, improve what's not, and then we move on. And so we allow for that kind of platform. We're also librarians as pseudo-legal advisors with copyright. We'll never give you a solid answer. We'll say, well, it looks like you could, because copyright is always decided in the courts. There's never an answer. It's just so horrible. And big business keeps taking over more and more of people's intellectual property, but we support our faculty. How do they use materials in their classrooms? What happens if they want to use photographs or text in the books or journals that they're trying to publish? So we advise and work with faculty on that. And that's something that didn't take up nearly as much time 10, 20 years ago. But everybody's becoming so much more litigious. And the worst company that started it all, Walt Disney. They are the enemy of all. They own their copyright like nobody's business. And they will sue you in a nanosecond. So don't draw Mickey Mouse on your living room window for the holidays. They'll come after you. But we are always working on how to best make material available legally, using all the permissions given to us via fair use. But I got to tell you, the publishers are locking down more and more. Textbooks are found now primarily as ebooks, not physical items. And the textbook publishers will not sell their e-textbooks to libraries, which means all students now have to buy their textbooks. They used to be able to come to the library and we have a few copies here and there. Can't do that anymore. So we're always pushing back against the overlord. We also do a lot of data wrangling. Libraries, data managers. So we do something called data management plans. And this is also in your favor as taxpayers and as citizens of the world. Faculty get grants from the National Institute of Science, National Institute of Health. You've all heard these words before. Every now and then you'll hear an article in the New York Times saying, wine is good for you, wine is bad for you. Don't know what to do. So moderation, right? And they usually say this is research sponsored at University of wherever by the National Institute of Health. Well, what was happening is people would make these proclamations and nobody could really go in and look at their data and see, is this data truly behind what people are saying? And so the federal government started saying, just like the journals, where we're paying people to publish these journals and then we have to buy them back, we should know what the data is. We should be able to preview it. Other people should be able to use that same data. We call it big data. You might have heard open science. But if everybody shares their cancer data, we're more likely to come to answers regarding different illnesses. And so when it comes to big data, if you're going to get a federal grant, you need to do a data management plan and make your data available online for everybody to see. So before they can even apply for the grant, they have to have a plan. We help them with that plan. And then when they have their data ready, after the grant has been approved, then we find it, we have a platform and we can put that data up. So then everybody can go in and see it. So it's one of the ways in which it's library work, really, organization of knowledge, and we make it available. Again, we're connecting, right? I'm not a data expert. I know just enough about all of this to be slightly dangerous. You know, my job is to hire the smart people who know how to make it happen, but it's one of the things that we do. Then there's all the ways that we worry about the cost of university to our students. And this is something that's in the press all the time. And I'll also remind you, whenever universities are in the press and being scolded for being expensive, they're looking at the privates for the most part. The CSUs, the UCs, our community colleges are awesome deals. Yes, it can be expensive. If you put your child into a dorm, it's expensive. I'm sorry, campus housing. But if you put your child into an apartment, it's expensive. Food and board is expensive, but college itself doesn't need to be. And we work on two things with our faculty around campus that's called Open Educational Resources. And what this is it's a database. We're going back to open access. Open's, you know, the word of my life right now. But open educational resources are free materials. So for example, think about algebra. Algebra is algebra. Why do you need a new textbook? The textbook that we probably used in high school has the same kind of theories and solutions, right? It's algebra. So a lot of people have been working on building open textbooks where they do e-textbooks and they don't own the copyright. They don't sell it to a textbook company. They make it freely available so students don't have to pay for that. And so as many times as we can, we try to get information that we can make available. And that has a list of different resources. And you can peruse all this on my webpage all day long. It helps my numbers go up. I invite you to do it. But you can see what kind of information we make available. Then there's also affordable learning solutions. This is where we really work with faculty on finding lower cost textbooks. You know, you might have your favorite textbook, but is it the most affordable? And is there that much of a difference? And this goes down to the theory of, okay, you may want an Audi, but a Honda will get you there. It's a really solid car. And that's kind of like when we think about the textbooks, right? Like what is good enough that gives you a solid tool for our students to use for their education that does not cost them money? And so that's something that we partner with. Now, this is us again, library is a connector, and this is something I put into effect about 4 years ago. And when I say I mean everybody who works in the library. It's like I bought the database, I signed the check, and you know, I brought the idea in, and my staff, my amazing faculty and staff, make all this happen. You might have heard the term that Sac State is an anchor university, that we're embedded in this city, in this region, and we educate the majority of people who stay in the area, but we also are here to help with the State House, with our social services, our not-for-profits, our for-profits. We are part of the greater community, and we want to make our expertise available. But how do you find out who has expertise? If you want to move up from Silicon Valley, but you want to find out who does battery expertise in this area, how would you even begin to do that? You'd probably have to call the provost, who might then reach out to the dean, who will then ask the chairs of the departments to have the faculty self-identify. And by that time, 3 months have gone by, right? And any for-profit business is like, the heck with you guys, I'm working in the real world, not the academic world. So this is what we call a faculty profile system. And we spun this up in order to connect people to the experts in our community. So all of our faculty are listed. It's an alphabetical list. We have 1,272 full-time tenure track faculty, okay? This is not all of our lecturers. We have a lot of amazing, knowledgeable lecturers, but these are people who are firmly embedded, because it would take all of my staff's time moving the lecturers in and out all the time. But what this does is you can search people, you can look up their topics, you can look by affiliation. I'm going to pick Yosef here, Professor Abul Hassan. He's a super nice, sweet new hire. And he's with our College of Health and Human Services in the Department of Public Health. And this tells us his organizational affiliations. And if I show more, I can find out what all he's been involved with. I see his education. And then you'll see that it has works on the upper right-hand side. And when I click on that, it shows all of the work that he's done. So when you look for expertise, you can go in and do a search, and you're searching terms that this person has used. So you can see, how does the little button work again? Right here, he mentions terms, I can just point, that he uses to describe his work. He put that out there himself. And then you can also look at everything else he's involved with, and it helps you find out more about that person. Or you could just type in water resources and find out who all has water expertise. So that's something super cool. We also have, and this is something we're involved in building on campus, something called an ORCID ID. So imagine my name is not Amy Kautzman, because there's only one other one, and I don't like her very much. But imagine my name is, I don't know, what's it called? Ellen Smith. There's a million Ellen Smiths, I would guess. And imagine that I have people who want to look up my scholarship. How would they know who I am? Imagine there's an Alan Smith in history, an Alan Smith in psychology, and an Alan Smith in chemistry. This ID is like a social security number for my scholarly work. So imagine I'm Alan Smith and I get married and I change my last name to Ellen Taylor. Well, that marriage didn't last very long. So then I go back to Smith. But in the meanwhile, I published articles under it. I'm making it really difficult for anybody to find out what I've published. That social security number for my publication work will be assigned to everything I publish. That's something that libraries help to connect to the different publishers. So people who sign up for that, and it's free, can always, once you find one thing by that scholar, you can go in and use the ORCID ID, and then that will connect you to everything else that they ever did. So it's one way that we're trying to collocate people's information together. So then we also build collections, okay? Yes, we buy books, we buy journals, databases, indexes, but we also build collections. Now, these are not the collections necessarily that we built, because again, we support our community in doing their scholarship and making everything available. So this is a platform where campus members can publish. So during COVID, we had a group of faculty work on the Sacramento COVID-19 Asian American Oral History Project, because COVID hit different communities in different ways. And we remember the politics and the hate, as well as the illnesses that hit people. And so our academics worked on this. And then when you click on that, you're able to bring up 76 different oral histories by people in our community and what they went through during that time. So while we're in the midst of activities happening, we're capturing that, and we're building scholarship, and we're capturing real life history in real time. You know, we do that in a number of different ways. Oh, sorry. And then this is also another sample of the pages. All of our, we call it ETDs, electronic thesis and dissertations. Who here was a Sac State grad student? Right. So depending when you graduated, I think we have 76 forward. All of the thesis and dissertations are full text online. Now, I still have thousands of them that we need to scan and get online. It's just money, and that's all, you know, all priorities. But people can search and find our scholars' information. And when I say scholars, I'm talking about undergraduates. I'm talking about graduate students. Some of it's exceptionally good, some of it, but knowing it's going to be public, maybe that will help them put a little more focus on it. And then other collections. This is from our special collections and archives page. Some of our featured collections, the Chicano Oral History Project, Japanese American Archival Collections, manuscripts. We have dozens and dozens of collections, but this is one fairly new, a couple years old. We're exceptionally proud of this. Working with the community, both scholars at UC Davis, former graduates here on campus, we now have the largest Chicana oral history in the United States. So we have 99 at this point, I believe, and we're adding, I think, another 35 or so. So the group that helped to bring this together is still out there interviewing people. Again, this is our history. These are people who went on strike on campus in the 60s. Some of you might have been here for some of these conversations, and some of you will know people in this group. So it's super cool. Our biggest pride in our collection is the Japanese American Archival Collection, and tomorrow is the anniversary and time of remembrance down at the California Museum for the horrible action where we put our neighbors in concentration camps. We never want to forget that. We never want to take away our opportunity to be responsible to one another. So we have that entire collection full text online available to everyone. So it's one of the things we do where, yeah, we have everything in archival boxes, acid-free folders, you know, it's beautifully arranged. There is gorgeous, heartbreaking notes, letters, documents, but anybody from anywhere in the world can get access to this. And we've also now started a fellowship for students. So once a year, we allow for 2 undergrads to come and study. Yeah, sure, they can get this all online, but what is it like to come into the library, touch the stuff, move through it? And then last year, we paid $125,000 for an overhead scanner, which is crazy expensive, but how do you make your collections digital unless you have the means to do so? So we have a whole quiver of scanners, you know, fast scanners, slower scanners, some high end like this. And so we have some Royal Chicano Air Force posters that we can scan on this. Those of you that have heard of the rock and roll poster collection that we brought in, we're going to be scanning those posters on this. So it's part of, again, capturing our history and making it available. Okay, then Libraries Innovator. We brought in a makerspace. So it's been open, it'll be a year, March 31st. One of the things I'm really proud of, it's a true education is a mix of theoretical and hands-on. And the jobs of today and into the future are requiring a level of technical knowledge that we couldn't even imagine back when we were in high school and college, skills that our students need to have. So with this in mind, I raised money for and built our Singer Studio, close to 10,000 square feet of high and low tech for tools that allow them to play, to learn, and have fun. Our campus is 1 mile from Sacramento's largest light industry area, the Power and Alliance area. Those people are constantly looking for people who have skill sets to apply them to their businesses, to be managers, to start their own businesses, to be entrepreneurs. And we want to help our students do that. So just as we support research and creation and output, we support ideation and creation. And this is right next door to the Carlson Center for Entrepreneurship that I invited into the library. Because again, the library is where people come to learn, to connect. It's not just about books. So if you haven't been by the Singer Studio, maybe we should set up a tour at some point. It's super cool, and we've got more 3D printers than you can imagine. And we've got classes where one of my faculty members is teaching fish hatchery skills and in Costa Rica. So he's having his students print out GIS maps of Costa Rica so they can show how water moves down the rainforest. And then students are printing out their area that they're writing their papers on, and they have a physical manifestation of what they're doing, which not only do they learn how to 3D print, and they're learning science, but it's just a way of getting people more involved. Just how, you know, when you write notes, you remember things more. So when you have to build something, you're going to remember more facts about it. What's really amazing is the most popular item is our embroidery machine. I had a guy who was a rapper. He designed his brand. He's now got his brand on his shirts, his hats, his jeans. We've got some of the fraternities and sororities coming in and using it for some of our students are buying, clothes at Goodwill, too big. They're coming in here learning how to sew. They're watching YouTube videos and then hemming their pants. That would be so cool. Then, libraries as future casters. What's next? I'm in the midst right now working with facilities. They're painting and putting holes in my walls. Tuesday, I was just out at Barco and Rancho Cordova. They're an international company that deals with LED lights and displays. And we're working with a full-size data wall. So it's going to be an LED wall. And I'm not talking monitors put together as individual LEDs. It's $150,000 money from the state that they gave to us to build a space where our faculty can continue to grow and improve their technical skills, because once you leave college, as you all know, because you're here, the learning never ends, right? So how do we have a space for faculty to learn? And then if I put it in the library when the faculty aren't there, guess what? The students get to use it. And then the other one is just going to be a faculty seminar room. It's not going to look that pretty. I just like that picture. It's going to be a Sac State building with nicer walls, but basically it's a space that allows our faculty to get together, because if you've been, has anybody here been faculty on campus? Okay, how small are the rooms for, are there rooms where all the faculty can meet in one room together? No, so when they do job talks, if they have a guest speaker, if they want to meet with another department, this will be a space, because we can't have healthy growing students if we don't take care of our faculty. And that's also a goal that we have. Yeah. So, are our libraries really that different? I mean, we've got some shiny stuff, we've got some other stuff, but when you think about the library you came of age in, hopefully it was a library that excited you, that educated you, that connected you with other people, that made you dream about things you could be. And then, of course, we all narrow down, but at the beginning, a library is hopefully a place where you come. I mean, even if you're just going, whoa, that's a mic drop. Even if you're just going to hang out with your friends, a library is a place for you to find community, and that's what we want. And so my job is just to make sure that we have a safe place, a place where people can improve themselves and become better people. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was wonderful. I see that we have questions, hands going up all over. So I'll go out in the audience and we'll get you some questions here. We ask everybody to use the mic because this is being broadcast on Zoom.
I'm being practical. We're Renaissance members. We get a library card as part of our membership, but what access do we actually have? What are we limited to?
I like to reframe it as, what do you get access to? You get access to all of our print materials. So you can check out materials. Because of contract laws, we cannot give you access to dial in to our databases. This is, again, intellectual property, who owns what. My biggest expense, this is an example. 3 years ago, I spent $10,000 on video films, media, movies and etc. Last year, I spent $12,000. I have spent $58,000 this year, because they keep limiting. There's no longer selling DVDs for a lot of these films, and streaming keeps going up, and you have to renew every year. These companies are locking us down every which way we can. It's kind of insane. So I know a lot of people want access to the online materials. As members of our community, you can come in and sign up for an access code that will allow you to use our computers for 2 hours a day, same as in the public libraries. But let me tell you, the Sac Public Library is an awesome resource. They can give you access to the New York Times. I can't afford that for my campus. You pay for and get ebooks, videos, all sorts of good stuff. I think we're in good partnership with them. We do a lot of work together, and you've got some great libraries around to get whatever you want, but come in and check out books. Come on in and check out all the books you want.
Amy, I had a question. You talked about open access and self-publishing for faculty, and that they could do, publish their research and have that then available. How is that research assessed by other faculty? Is it
Peer reviewed.
considered valuable when it comes time for tenure RTP process? If it's not a quote unquote tier 1 journal, there's a hierarchy in a lot of disciplines. And so it becomes very difficult for some faculty to publish in journals that have a high enough level of respect among their colleagues to have it bear a lot of weight in that RTP process.
Yeah, and this is really a conversation between faculty. So the system itself, the OJS, the Open Journal System, does build in the peer review process, right? And so there is as rigorous a process as the editorial team decides to build into it. But you raise a really good point. We always give value to those journals that have been around longer. And that has often hurt many people in our communities. Think about when women's studies first started, ethnic studies, anything that's slightly different and out of the norm, they were not considered real scholarship. They could not get into the regular journals. Why would we do history of women in our history journals? Go away, that doesn't matter. And so people have always had to invent and then build these journals. So there is a bias against them at the beginning. But it all depends too. If we have people who are willing to leave the editorial boards of some of these esteemed journals and bring their esteemed people with them and hold same kind of rigor to new journals, that can count. But it is a conversation. I think the faculty member might need to frame it as in, I know this is a new journal, but look who's on the board. Or I know this is a new journal, but guess what? This is a new field of study and nobody else is publishing this. But you're at a disadvantage. And we all know that you get more freedom as you're more senior. It's a broken system. I can't make excuses for it. That kitten exploding everything, she needs to go all over the place.
Hi, I have some questions about your computer servers capability. You mentioned, of course, going away from paper and scanning things and having a lot more digital resources. How much of your budget goes towards having to buy more and more servers to hold the data? And how many servers and what's beyond terabytes? I've lost track, but I know there's stuff.
Yeah. So the happiness of my world is about 5 years ago, we got rid of all of our servers. So we have some virtual servers now, mostly for the web pages and other things that are operated by IRT, and that's our IT group out here on campus. But our servers are all probably AWS, Amazon. Everything's in the cloud and everything's replicated in multiple places. So I no longer, when campus loses power or I lose power, have to rush to campus and make sure that the backup servers are working, that the generators are working, that I don't have to worry about that anymore. So this is, again, how things change. We have always had to pay. You pay for personnel costs. I don't have to hire server operators anymore, which at our salaries is not always easy to do. So it makes things easier, and server costs and memory is so affordable. It's never been as affordable, which is why we're able to scan and make digital so many of these things. Okay. Yeah, just if I can talk on that while you're getting the mic, so look at the Chicano Oral History Project. It's video and transcript. Could you imagine what it would take to store 130 some hour plus long videos? It's nothing.
Okay, so my question, I heard you say that, you try to create an open, inviting environment, come into the library, hang out, eat, sleep, drink, whatever.
Not everything, but yes.
All right.
No canoodling.
Yeah. Okay. When I was a kid and you went to the library, shh,
Mhm.
quiet. Now, today, I mean, about 15 years ago, I had the unfortunate experience of trying to teach introduction to computers to a community college in Arizona. It was awful. I hated it. But anyway, I'd go into the library and it was loud. God, it was so much noise. I thought, why isn't the library director going around, shushing people? Maybe, I was born in the last century around, mid-century. I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, that's how it was back then. And I'm just wondering, what is your opinion about that? I also have another question. It's about academic integrity and AI. I think you know where that question goes. So I'll just leave it at that.
So the building one is the easy one. I mean, people like to study in different ways, and so much more work is group study work. I was a student who would have to go, I know my library, I knew where my desk, we all had our desk, right? We're such creatures of habit. And I would have to face a wall and it would be in a corner. And, I'm that student that if somebody walked by, I'd be like, squirrel. I could not study. I could not be in the noisy floor. Our third floor is a party floor. Oh my God. But it's also really an interesting exercise. I call it a laboratory in so many ways, especially with so many first-generation students. They don't always know how to study. And we have whiteboards everywhere. And I'll see these students working out these math theorems and making mistakes and erasing them and doing them again. And I'll see other students just watching them. And you can almost see the thought process. And one of the students said to me once, is like, I thought everybody just knew that and it was perfect. And the fact that I see them making mistakes and having to fix it, and they're doing it in public where everybody can see them. I mean, that's teaching people how to learn. So for those students in those spaces, that's a good way to learn. But on the fourth floor, it's pin drop quiet. Fifth floor, pin drop quiet. Second floor, medium, lower level, medium. There's enough room at this point. The building's huge. There's enough room for people to find their space. And some people like to study with others and some people don't. And if you would be a better studier in a quiet place, but you're only here because you're with your friends and you wouldn't be studying otherwise, then take that kind of half-ass space and make it work for you because it's better than nothing. And that's what I want. AI, we don't know what AI is going to bring. So much of the stuff we hear about AI is what we would hear about calculators. If anybody was ever told they couldn't take a calculator into a math class, now they tell you exactly which calculator to buy. What do we need to know and what do we need to understand? And we don't know where it's going to take us. I'm a little nervous, but I'm not entirely afraid. I will tell you, I've used AI. We used it the other day, going back to the Chicano oral histories. We want to write a little synopsis for every one of these oral histories. There's 30 some, and they're long, 50, 60 page documents. So we made a query, put it into BARD, because that's the one that didn't have a limit on the number of words you could put in. We fed it the text, and it gave us a paragraph that was as good as anything we could have done. And I was like, dang. I was impressed. I'm also worried about the person who did that job, but guess what? Nobody really wants to do that job. It's not a very interesting job. Okay.
I have also two questions.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. The first is, I'm used to head librarians being called a librarian. And I'm not sure that the use of the term director just seems off to me. The second question has to do with deacquisitioning. And there are certain subjects that become prominent at times. For example, in the 60s through to 1990, drugs were very much written about and talked about. Then there was a dearth of information and a dearth of caring. Once white middle class people started using drugs heavily, it became a very big and important subject again. I'm just wondering if all of the books that were there in the 60s through the 90s were deacquisitioned, and now you have to repurchase them.
That's a good question. I don't know how many, are you talking like LSD and mushrooms and stuff like that, marijuana, that kind of drugs, or pharmaceutical drugs? Yeah, yeah. Well, if it's a history thing, we seldom respectfully, remove the items if it's history. History seldom goes out of date. Science goes out of date very readily. We just recently removed a bunch of books, old nursing and pharmaceutical books from the 70s, which none of that science would stand anymore. But I don't think that we really go back and repurchase much of anything. I haven't heard of such a thing. And this is the thing also, Internet Archives, all those old books are full text online. This is what's really interesting. And again, we are not the library of record. We're not an R1. We keep the books that are most heavily used for the highest level of research going on our campus. We don't keep everything. And director, I mean, it covers both ends. The dean part is because my librarians are faculty. And that's the case in about 50% of the libraries, academic libraries. And directors, because I run an organization. I direct, and it's not just academic. And some of the deans have operations, but none of the deans have quite as, like I have my own tech group. No other dean has their own tech group. I know all my custodians by name. Because when you run my library as busy as we are with 12,000 people a day, you know your people, you keep it going. Okay.
I used to work for Universal Studios, and we used to call Disney the ravenous rat. Disney did a full court press to get the 100-year copy law passed.
Yep.
They bought it, lock, stock, and barrel.
Yep.
When I worked for Universal, I also worked in the record group. I toured one of the last vinyl record plants in the United States. I saw the 8-track come in. I saw the cassette come in, and I left when CDs came in. And I went and had lunch with the VP of records because we had a great relationship. So I'm leaving, I'm moving on. I was going to Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And if I had said to him, there's this thing streaming coming along, he would have thrown me out of his office. So they didn't see what was coming, but I watched the vinyl record go to the CD.
I don't think there was a question there, but it's an interesting comment. So we're going to wrap it up.
So there was one question in the Q&A, and might interest these people too. And they asked if there is a tour of the library for the Renaissance members.
We can do that. Well, never ran away, but sure. Oh, there she is.
Yes.
Yes.
So here I am, and we have a summer program coming up, and we have forums going on forever. And
Yeah.
so we would welcome you back at any time. Love a tour of the library,
Be
love a
great.
tour of that makerspace. So thank you
Yes,
so much.
yes.
Amy, this was just incredible. It is
Thank
so
you all.
fascinating.
Thank you.
Thank you.